wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con ustedes mañana. This evening, we'll focus on the opening of the new Bowling Road and Rex Road elementary schools and other related recommendations in the southern area of our district, including recommendations related to the newly constructed Fuquay-Varina Middle School. As a reminder, today's session was prepared by the Office of Student Assignment, and the information we will review with you this evening is a subset of the full presentation that was shared with the board during their work session on September 3rd. Again, this evening, we will focus on the opening of the new Bowling Road and Rex Road elementary schools and other related recommendations in the southern area of our district, including recommendations related to the newly constructed Fuquay-Varina Middle School. Otra vez, si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Before we begin, let me go over some logistics. Our session will last no longer than an hour and a half. We will begin with a presentation and conclude by responding to questions from today's session. We recognize that now and throughout the session, you may have questions regarding the proposal or the recommended stability rules. To caption the questions, we will be using the Q&A feature within Google Meet. To access this feature from a computer, click on the three shapes in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. It's like a triangle, a square, and a circle. If you're using a mobile device, select the three dots first, then select the icon with the three shapes. You should then see a Q&A feature identified by a question mark icon. To ensure your questions are anonymous, our hosts and moderators will be monitoring the Q&A for questions and capturing them throughout this evening's session. Once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that means that your question has been successfully captured by our moderators and you do not need to submit it again. We will make every effort to respond to your questions towards the end of our session. In addition, we will use your questions to update the FAQ portion of our website. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. In addition, we are asking that you contribute to the larger community discussion related to the initial draft of the 2025-26 enrollment proposal via Thought Exchange. The Thought Exchange will remain open through September 29th. After it has closed, we will summarize the feedback received through the Thought Exchange, and we will share the summary with the board during their work session on October 15th. No one will be personally identified in the summary. Before I turn things over to Susan, we would like to remind you that today's session will focus on the opening of the Bowling Road and Rex Road elementary schools and other related recommendations in the southern area of our district, including recommendations related to the newly constructed Fuquay-Varina Middle School. By the end of this evening session, you will have an opportunity to review the assignment planning process, review recommendations included in the initial draft specific to your area of the district, share thoughts and ideas via Thought Exchange for review and consideration for both staff and board members, and perhaps most importantly, share questions that you may have that will help you gain a better understanding of the potential impacts of the proposed plan for your family. Now I will turn things over to Susan.
Corelli, thank you so much for welcoming all of us and for sharing all that information with our guests on how to post questions. For those of you that have joined us just recently, we'll go over that a couple of times throughout the session. So if you do have questions throughout today's session, we do encourage you to use the Q&A tool here in the Google Meet so that we can make sure we capture all those questions and then start responding to those toward the end of our session. To provide some context, on September 3rd, staff members presented the initial draft of a new student enrollment proposal to the Board of Education. This draft includes proposed school assignment changes for the 2025-2026 school year. So that would be next July to August timeframe. This year's student assignment proposal focuses on the opening of Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove High School. Also, the proposal includes base assignment changes, calendar application changes, and a few other recommendations to relieve capped and overcrowded schools throughout the district while also filling underutilized schools. Many of these changes will allow students to attend a less crowded school and to have a shorter bus service or bus route. The proposal also includes recommendations for stability rules for families that are impacted by the recommendations included in the current proposal.
Hey, Susan, sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to say that Daniel Simons, principal at Buckhorn Creek Elementary, also joined us tonight.
Glad to have you. All of the information that we're sharing in tonight's presentation is available on our website. The website at the top is the 2025 enrollment proposal site. This site is a specific site that launched on September 3rd that has all of the information about the current set of recommendations, as well as resources to help you understand those recommendations, including our address lookup tool, as well as some video resources to support your understanding of how the plan was put together. In addition, the WCPSS.net assignment planning page remains open and will remain open perpetually or for the foreseeable future, as it has lots of information to help you better understand the full process of assignment planning that our district uses to get to the point where we're ready to make the recommendations for this year's assignment plan. Again, if you're just joining us, please continue to use the Q&A feature in Google Meet. So as a reminder, if you're using a computer or laptop, you're looking for these three shapes in your toolbar, either on the top or bottom of your screen. If you're using a mobile device, you want to click these three dots and then look for that set of shapes. Ultimately, you're looking for that question mark or the Q&A feature to post your questions. As a reminder, we want to ensure that your questions are able to be posted anonymously. So when you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A feature, that lets you know that one of our moderators has captured your question so that we'll be able to address it toward the end of today's session. Once you see that it's been removed, you do not need to submit the question again. And of course, we want to continue to encourage all of you to participate in our ongoing thought exchange, which is an online discussion about the initial draft of the plan. You can use this QR code or type in the information that you see to the right of it. And as a reminder, that thought exchange will remain open through September 29th, at which point we'll start summarizing all of the information that's been collected and prepare that for our presentation to the board on October 15th. So before we get into the recommendations for this reason, we just want to take a brief moment and go through the assignment planning process. As I mentioned earlier, all of the information that we're sharing with you tonight and more is available on our website. And so I will continuously redirect you to that site if you want to go into a detailed overview of how we got to this point. But just as a reminder, there is a core board policy that our district uses to guide the development of the annual enrollment plan, and that is Board Policy 4150. This policy contains 4 core pillars to help us shape each of our annual enrollment plans and in the decision-making process, things to be mindful of. Those pillars are student achievement, proximity, stability, and operational efficiency. And those terms have very specific definitions in our policy. So I want to make sure that you have a better overview and understanding of how that policy reads and how that guidance is given to staff as we develop each year's enrollment plan. So we're going to take a brief moment and watch a video that outlines that process, and then we'll come back together.
Understanding student assignment. It's no secret that our school district is growing, and it's growing fast. That means each year we need to address overcrowded schools and often need to open new schools to keep up with this growth. To state the obvious, we may have to reduce the enrollment at an existing school or fill new schools with students. This is done through the annual student assignment process. To best understand when and where new growth is coming in our district, we conduct an annual enrollment forecast. This forecast helps us look ahead up to 10 years and project enrollment growth throughout the district. This information helps us update our capital improvement plan and to make more informed decisions related to school assignments. Each year, some students are assigned to one of our new schools or reassigned to an existing school. This ensures we have balanced school populations across the district. We know families love their schools and that student assignment decisions can be worrisome. That's why we want to be completely transparent in how we make them. Our school board has established 4 pillars that guide each and every student assignment decision. Here's what they mean and how they work together. Student achievement. We want all of our schools to provide the best academic opportunities for our students. This pillar compels us to think about whether a student assignment plan can help reduce high concentrations of poverty or low-performing students at some of our schools. Stability. Essentially, we try to keep as many children at their current school through the exit grade as possible. When reassignments are necessary, we provide the opportunity for some students to submit a stability transfer request and stay at their current school through the exit grade. Operational efficiency. This pillar is about making sure all of our schools and transportation resources are at their best use. Overcrowded schools are a problem. Classrooms packed with too many students are one thing. But then there are the endless carpool lines, bathroom facilities that can't comfortably accommodate everyone, and having to start lunch when most people are still working on breakfast. On the flip side, having under-enrolled schools is an inefficient use of public resources, particularly when there are crowded schools nearby. Proximity. Okay, this one can be a little tricky. In a perfect world, houses would be built in neat little rows on a predictable timeline and at a slow and steady rate. As it is, we live in an imperfect world where lots and lots of homes pop up in one area, while growth is slight or non-existent in others. For this reason, it is impossible to send every child to their most proximate school unless we want some of our schools bursting at the seams while others are half empty. That said, this pillar states that we will send students to schools within a reasonable distance. Often, the difference between the most proximate school and the next most proximate school is no more than a couple of miles. Please remember that we must consider all 4 of these pillars when making assignment decisions. There is no priority among the 4 that applies in every situation. It's a balancing act that ultimately helps us come up with the best possible plan for everyone. Thank you for working with us to ensure our school system continues to serve all students well. Understanding student assignment.
That replay gets me every time. So hopefully that information was helpful for you to better understand the 4 pillars in our policy that guide student assignment. And at this point, we also want to talk about some additional information that is taken into consideration as we develop our annual enrollment plan. We do follow an annual planning cycle that has 6 main steps. The first step is the presentation of the annual enrollment forecast, and this forecast provides both 1 and 10-year growth projections for enrollment in the district. This includes all projected students that Wake County Public Schools is projected to serve, so it does take into consideration things like charter schools and other types of educational environments. Even though the enrollment forecast provides a 10-year projection for enrollment, you can see from this slide that it is updated annually to account for any changes in residential development patterns, home sales, birth rates, and other areas that impact this type of forecast. Simply knowing how many students the district needs to be prepared to serve is helpful. However, knowing where within and throughout the district this growth is expected is particularly handy when we're developing our annual enrollment plans. So the map you see here depicts the projected change in total student population residing in various areas across the district. What you should notice is that the growth is not evenly distributed throughout the district, and that some areas of the district are projected to stabilize, meaning they have maybe paired up and down arrows showing sort of a stabilization or no significant change in student enrollment in those areas. I've highlighted here the region that will be discussed in today's presentation just for some additional context. The next step in our planning process is a review of the projected crowding for the next school year. So as I mentioned, in addition to the forecast giving us a 10-year outlook, it also provides a 1-year projection that we use to determine our funding needs for the coming school year, as well as to project or predict crowding for the next school year. In this case, the projections that you see here were shared in March of 2024 with our board and are for the current 24-25 school year. This is a quick look at the projected crowding for our elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the district, which is based on the annual forecast. And again, I have highlighted the region that will be discussed in today's session for additional context. As I mentioned earlier, we're not going to spend a lot of time on these steps. So if you are interested in learning more about these steps, please continue to visit our assignment planning website. The third step then that is in our process before we get prepared to develop the actual enrollment plan is to review the capital improvement plan, or CIP. This includes any adjustments that have been made during the annual review process for the CIP. Highlighted here by the green circle is the general location of the new Woods Creek Elementary School that opened this past July. These orange circles then represent and show you where throughout the county our new schools are projected to open for the 25-26 school year, 2 of which we're going to talk about today. And then these darker gray circles highlight where the projected new schools in future years of the capital improvement plan are located throughout the district. The chart you see here shows the projected opening years for all of the approved new school projects in the 7-year CIP. Please note that although the major renovations project during the same time frame are not shown on this chart, they are considered and accounted for during the annual enrollment planning process. I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge the asterisk that you see by each of the new and future school sites, and remind you that all of our major projects throughout the district, both new schools and renovations, do have the potential for completion date changes based on market volatility, scope changes, and changes in design and construction schedules. Essentially, we are constantly monitoring the progress of all our construction projects and will adjust recommendations for the annual enrollment plan when needed. At this time, we are planning for the opening, as you can see, sort of designated in orange, of Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove High School for the 25-26 school year. In addition, Baucom Elementary and Fuquay-Varina Middle have moved into their newly renovated campuses with expanded capacity this year, and there are some recommendations included in the plan for both of these schools. During today's session, we will specifically review the recommendations for the new Rex Road Elementary School, as well as the new Bowling Road Elementary School and other recommendations in this area. Once the forecast is complete and we've had a chance to look at projected crowding impacts and taken into account all of the CIP updates, we're ready to begin step 4, which is actual development of the annual enrollment plan. The first step in this process is to initiate public engagement activities that capture thoughts and ideas from families and community members to help inform them as to the development of the next enrollment plan, to help inform us and the staff as we're developing the next enrollment plan. For this year's plan, these sessions were held between March and May. For a complete summary of the thoughts and ideas captured from families and community members during this year's public engagement sessions, please visit our assignment planning website. Overall, we'd like to call out that we had an increase of about 75% for participants attending our in-person sessions as well as joining our virtual sessions, and that is compared to the sessions that we hosted in 2023. You can also see the participation information for the sessions specific to this area highlighted in green on this slide. Participants at these sessions were presented with 2 core questions to generate discussion and ideas. Specifically, participants were asked to share what they thought district leadership should be aware of and take into consideration when opening a new school in their community and, in general, managing enrollment growth and school crowding. As you can see, many thoughts and ideas were generated and captured during these sessions, and I won't take the time here to read through all of them, but we have taken all of these ideas and concerns into consideration throughout the planning process. Here's another set of key takeaways from these sessions. Again, full summaries from these sessions are available on our assignment planning website. In addition to the live or in-person sessions that we hosted, we also hosted several different thought exchanges to increase access for families and community members to this important discussion. Overall, we had an increase in thoughts submitted of about 275% compared to the similar types of exchanges that we hosted in 2023. You can also see the participation information for the exchanges specific to this area highlighted in green. And here is a sample of the results from the thought exchanges that are specific to this area. And again, once more, for a full summary of all of the information that was collected during these sessions, please continue to visit our assignment planning website. We're often asked, what do we do with the information we gather during these spring public engagement sessions? And similarly, the information we're gathering now during our fall information sessions. A few examples of how we extend this work include reviewing and assessing the information gathered to determine if any topics require more detailed exploration. This year, we identified a key question related to calendar alignment and invited those who volunteered to participate in focus groups to participate in AI-supported interviews. These were recently concluded, and we will share the findings from this work at a future board work session. Considering how we can develop stability rules that provide as much stability as possible for families, we've heard that loud and clear throughout the last several years that where is it that we can perhaps expand or adjust the stability rules that were originally included in policy so that we can provide that additional stability for families. And of course, considering thoughts and ideas that we've heard about keeping cohorts together, having calendar continuity wherever possible, all of those types of sort of things are built into our enrollment planning process as a result of the feedback we've received throughout our various public engagement sessions. So again, these are just a few examples of how we work to incorporate that feedback that we receive from families and community members in preparing the initial draft of the recommendations of the enrollment plan. As we're going through the enrollment planning process, one of the key components is having an initial clarifying discussion with our board to determine what all should be included in this year's specific enrollment plan. And what you see here is that in addition to developing attendance areas for new schools, we were also asked to continue addressing crowding and cap schools wherever possible, and to address other important school choice options for the district. The board, of course, asked that we continue the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, as well as to continue our work toward improving operational and transportation efficiency. So at this stage of the preparation process, we're really ready to start releasing the developed or set of recommendations for the first or initial draft of the annual enrollment plan. But before we get into that and dive into those recommendations, I would like to briefly review steps 5 and 6 of the planning process. So after last year's plan was approved in the fall of 23 to help us with the 24-25 school year, some additional steps continue to occur. Step 5 reflects that reviewing and approving capped schools is that sort of 5th step in the process. The work is completed after the approval of an annual enrollment plan, so we'll see this work happen after this plan is approved. And once the board approved the 24-25 enrollment plan last fall, we started reviewing which schools still had some concerns and were facing overcrowding concerns that needed to be addressed. And so these specific recommendations were brought to the board in February, and you can see the names of the schools in your area that are currently capped highlighted in green. And then here you see step 6 in the planning process, reviewing options to address other school utilization concerns. In particular, part 3 of this process, or this step in the sequence, a review of schools operating on a year-round calendar that did not have long-term crowding concerns, did result in the board approving calendar changes for 2 of our middle schools for the 2025-26 school year. As you can see, they're listed here. They're not in this region, so we haven't highlighted them for you, but they're Pine Hollow Middle and Roseville Middle both were approved to have their calendar converted to traditional to take effect for the 25-26 school year. As a reminder, again, all of the information about not only the 6-step planning process, but all of the recommendations we're getting ready to review can be found on our assignment planning website, as well as the 25-26 enrollment plan can be found on the 2025 enrollment proposal site. Both of these sites are cross-linked, so whichever one you get to, you can easily navigate back and forth to the other one. And as we know that some of you have been joining us all throughout the last several minutes, we wanted to remind you that at any time during the presentation, you're invited to post your questions using the Q&A feature here in the Google Meet. You're also welcome to add thoughts or concerns to our thought exchange anytime through September 29th. Final reminder, and I won't say this part again, once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A feature, that lets you know that our moderators have captured your question successfully and that we'll be prepared to respond to it later in today's session. It is our hope that you will find that the following recommendations take into account information that's been shared in that review and updates portion of our presentation so far, which includes guidance provided by Board Policy 4150, Input and feedback gathered from families and community members, the need to address capped and overcrowded schools while being mindful of future school openings, the need to continue the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, and the need to support improvements in operational and transportation efficiency. I think I heard that some of you are trying to maybe use the raise the hand feature just as a reminder to make sure that all of your questions are protected and anonymous. We'll be using the Q&A feature to capture those questions today. In summary, before we jump into the recommendations for this area, for the 25-26 enrollment plan, we have completed steps 1 through 3, and we're now in step 4, and we'll be in step 4 through the end of November. And we will initiate steps 5 and 6 shortly following the approval of the plan so that families can have as much time as possible to prepare for any changes that might come from the work of those 2 steps. We'll start with an overview of the base assignment changes recommended in this draft by grade span. So what you see here is a slide that sort of visually depicts where throughout the district assignment recommendations are being made at the elementary level. You will notice a heavy concentration in the southern and western portions of the county, and that's related to the opening of those 3 new elementary schools. Hopefully, you'll also notice that there's a vast majority of the county that is unaffected by this year's enrollment plan, as we really tried hard to focus just on impacts related to the opening of schools or newly renovated campuses. That was really the primary focus of this year's plan. At the middle school level, you can see a similar arrangement. Again, the area that you see towards the southern or southwestern edge of the county is related to the opening of one of our elementary schools and creating a consistent feeder pattern for families affected by those changes. And here you see a quick look at the impacts at the high school level. As a reminder, we're opening a brand new high school in this region, and so that's really where the majority of the assignment recommendations are focused. And there are a couple of smaller recommendations in other parts of the district to help with feeder patterns and school utilization concerns. All right. So before we jump into the recommendations for this area, I think I want to address something that is on top of mind for most of you. We've received a lot of questions about stability rules, aside from questions about, why was our neighborhood selected, or is there a way that we can have adjustments made to the plan? Those are some common questions as well. But there's a lot of families that have very specific questions about how the stability rules work. So because Bowling Road and Rex Road Elementary are new schools, the stability rules will be slightly different for those 2 schools than other changes that we'll talk about that are from existing elementary schools to existing elementary schools. However, any middle school recommendations that we'll review today are from an existing middle school to an existing middle school. So those recommendations for stability will be pretty generous. So let's jump into the new elementary schools. For any of you that are living in an area or you're domiciled in an area that is being proposed to be assigned into either Bowling Road Elementary or Rex Road Elementary. Pleasant Plains is an Apex area, so I don't think families on this call will be impacted by that set of recommendations. The current set of proposed stability rules is that rising 4th and 5th grade students, so current 3rd and 4th grade students that would be rising into 4th or 5th grade for 25-26 would be eligible for a stability transfer. What that means is that those students would get notification and be told, hey, you are eligible for a stability transfer. If you'd like to take advantage of that, please fill out this quick form, and we will guarantee that we will approve it as long as you submit it during that official stability window. The official stability window dates have yet to be set because the board did just do a final adjustment to the plan timeline, but it will be sometime in December. So the goal is to make sure that you can complete your stability transfers, get your responses on those transfers prior to the start of the holiday break, be done with it, move on, and start the second semester with none of this, kind of hanging over your head. In addition to those rising 4th and 5th graders, the current stability rules also include a provision that if there are younger siblings of those students rising into any grade, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, so starting new in kindergarten for 25-26 or continuing in those lower grades, those students would also be eligible to join their older sibling and have that same stability transfer through the end of 5th grade. So I'm going to pause for a moment and just remind you, this is one of those examples of how the feedback we've been receiving from the community over the last couple of years, asking for more stability options, has impacted our planning process. Historically, when we opened new elementary schools, we only guaranteed stability transfers for rising 5th grade students because per policy, that's all we're required to do. In addition, if they had younger siblings, they were only eligible for that 1 year that that 5th grader was attending. And then once the 5th grader moved on to middle school, that younger sibling would be assigned back to the new base school for their area. So here you're seeing a really significant change in that practice and offering expanded rules, not just for 5th grade, but for 4th grade. And those siblings not only can come and join their older siblings, but they can also stay through the end of 5th grade. The only part that we can't promise, guarantee, or offer with our stability transfers at this point in time is they all would come without district transportation. With the current national shortage of bus drivers that we've been experiencing for the last several years, we just can't in good faith make that type of an offer for families, but we certainly can allow the students to stay if you can figure out carpool or ways to get your student to and from school. There are other elementary school recommendations we're going to talk about in tonight's presentation that involve going from a school that's already open and operating or existing to another school that's already open and operating or, again, existing. In this case, because there's already a student population, there's already a teacher and staff complement for the school, we've actually, again, provided way more generous stability rules than we've ever offered as a district. And so this is a pattern that we've been trying to follow for the last couple of years, where any student that's already attending that school that would like to stay and can figure out transportation, they are welcome to stay through the end of 5th grade and bring those siblings with them. So again, we're trying to provide stability for individual students and families. I do recognize that not having transportation can be an obstacle for some families, but at this time, that's sort of the give and take we can do. We can offer more generous stability transfers. We just can't provide transportation with those. Again, students in this category would be notified. The families would be notified so that they'd know that they need to put in that application. And again, it would be that same process, filling the application out in December. And then the last set of stability rules that are really specific to the recommendations we're going to talk about this evening are the middle school stability rules. So for any of the students that are being proposed to go from Holly Grove Middle to Fuquay-Varina Middle, because again, those are both open schools operating with an existing student population, we do recognize that Fuquay is a new campus, but it's not a new school. So we feel confident that we can offer these more generous stability rules for these particular recommendations as well. So any student that would like to stay would have that ability to do so, and they could bring a rising 6th grade sibling with them as well. And again, stay through the end of 8th grade. And I will clarify, because I think we get this question a lot, you will not have to resubmit that request each year. Once you submit it, it will be valid through 5th or 8th grade, good to go. You would always have the option during a regular transfer window to ask to go back to base if something changes in your family circumstances and you need transportation, or you just want to go to school with friends maybe from the neighborhood that are also going to the new school. You would always have that option, but you would not need to re-request the transfer each year. They would be valid until your student completed the 5th grade or the 8th grade. Again, our website has jam-packed with information. We have several frequently asked questions that address a lot of our stability rules, and we're going to continue to refresh and update that throughout this process as more questions come to us, so we can be super clear on how these current draft of recommended stability rules would support and help your family. Again, a reminder, if you would like to post a question about anything that I've already talked about or anything that I have yet to talk about, you're welcome to use the Q&A feature. So you're looking for those shapes. Our moderators are constantly monitoring that and grabbing those questions so that we can address those later into this evening's session, excuse me. And then, of course, our thought exchange will remain open through September 29th. I do keep reminding you about the thought exchange because that is the one tool where every single board member can read the thoughts and every single member of the planning team can read the thoughts. So it's really important that if you have a suggestion, an idea, a question, a celebration, you're really excited and you want to make sure we don't change something, please go ahead and contribute those thoughts or ideas to the thought exchange so everyone that's involved in the decision-making process has access to those thoughts and ideas. So let's start. Hopefully you've had a chance to review some of the presentation Probably that's what brought you here. You've at least visited the website and done an address lookup, or you're curious, or you actually were able to view our board work session where we talked through these. But Rex Road Elementary is scheduled to open for the 2025-26 school year. It's one of our new elementary schools in the sort of southwestern area of the district. It's located here, kind of east, northeast of the lake. And what you're seeing here is that at this time, the staff is recommending that Rex Road Elementary open as a multi-track year-round elementary school, which will give it a capacity of 924 students. The schools that will be directly impacted as drafted in the current proposal are Buckhorn Creek Elementary and Holly Grove Elementary. What you're seeing with the chart here, and I'm going to kind of orient you to the color scheme, the blue color bar that you see on the top of this table lets you know that at this point, if we were not to make any assignment changes, the crowding at Buckhorn Creek is projected to be 126% for the 25-26 school year, and the crowding at the capped Holly Grove Elementary is projected to be over 100%. So if we made no changes to these schools, they would be at or above capacity. There are other schools that have maybe a domino or cascading impact because of the relief we're going to be able to provide at both Holly Grove and Buckhorn Creek as a result of the opening of Rex Road. There's some additional relief we can provide to some other crowded or CAP schools in the region. As a reminder, Holly Ridge Elementary is one of our CAP schools as well. So you can see that with the exception of Holly Springs, all of the other projected schools projected to be impacted are well above the 100% capacity for their projected enrollment for next school year for 25-26. As a note, Holly Springs Elementary is the one school in this region that has a significant number of trailer units on its campus. And as a district, we have been actively working toward reducing the need for those trailers to where we could get to a point where we could actually start to remove them from the campus. So part of the reason for the recommendations for Holly Springs is to continue that effort toward reducing their dependency on those trailer units. So let's talk about the maps. The way the maps are set up is that the map that's on the left, so that's this one, shows you using the color palettes what the current base attendance area for the schools that are going to be impacted are. So the orangish color that you see here represents the current base attendance area for Holly Grove Elementary School. And this darker green color that you see here represents the base attendance area for Buckhorn Creek. The hashed out areas that you see, which are kind of here and here, represent the areas that we're projecting to impact with the opening of the new Rex Road Elementary. On the right, you see the after map. So if we were to move all of those hashed out areas out of Holly Grove Elementary and Buckhorn Creek Elementary, the new base attendance area for Rex Road would look something like this sort of bright green attendance area. You'll notice that this area is white on this map, but it is orange on this map. So this is part of that cascading or domino impact that we're going to talk through as we go through the presentation. But focusing right now just on Rex Road Elementary, the base attendance area would come from these two portions of the current Holly Grove Elementary base attendance area and the current Buckhorn Creek base attendance area, and would result in what you see on the slide on the right. This is probably one of our more complicated images that we need to walk through, so I'm going to step us through it one by one. Because of the movement of students out of Holly Grove Elementary and out of Buckhorn Creek Elementary, that frees up some seats. Like it's a bit drastic per se. So there would be some ability to add some students to these two campuses to create a more continuous attendance area, get some transportation efficiencies, as well as provide some relief to that significantly crowded Herbert Akins Road Elementary School. So what you see here highlighted by the one is the attendance area. Let me get hang on, I'm on the wrong slide. Got to draw here. So this portion of what you're seeing in this oval is part of Herbert Akins Road Elementary School's attendance area that's on the west side of GB Alford or Highway 55. Our recommendation is that that portion become part of Holly Grove Elementary, and that'll give it a nice stable base attendance area. This is a multi-track year-round elementary school moving to a multi-track year-round elementary school. The challenge here is that you're changing schools. So because these are existing school recommendations, these would be the most generous stability rules, where any student grades, current grades K through 4 that would like to stay next year, 1 through 5, they would be eligible to do so under the current proposed stability rules. The next section of the circle is sort of highlighted here. The proposal currently says, let's take this portion of Herbert Akins Road Elementary School's current base attendance area, as well as a small portion of the existing Lincoln Heights base attendance area, and add those to Buckhorn Creek Elementary. It's a better transportation efficiency pattern, and of course, it's on the west side of 55, so students would no longer have to cross that highway at the elementary level. The third section here is this very small piece right about here that again is part of the current Herbert Akins Road Elementary base attendance area that we're recommending become part of Lincoln Heights. Again, this is a transportation efficiency change to take advantage of the capacity that's going to be made available at Lincoln Heights when we talk about Bowling Road, but also to create some transportation efficiency for students in this area. The next set of recommendations you'll see on this slide are related to Holly Ridge Elementary and Herbert Akins Road Elementary. The portion that you see highlighted here and identified by the number 2, this area is already base assigned at Herbert Akins Road Middle School. So their current assignment is traditional Holly Ridge, multi-track, Herbert Akins Road Middle, and then on to high school. So the idea here is that with that relief that we're starting to be able to provide for Herbert Akins, we could go ahead and align that K-8 calendar continuity feeder pattern for these families and have that attendance area 100% assigned to Herbert Akins Road Elementary, as well as going on to Herbert Akins Road Middle. We do recognize that's a calendar change. So again, those generous stability rules are in place. So if a family wants to provide transportation and stay at Holly Ridge Elementary, they could. And then as they age forward, work through the rest of their assignments. So you can see that change here. And then the next piece on this map is, well, if Holly Ridge is capped, but it doesn't need that much relief. That's a significant size of the attendance area. So we're looking at taking this portion of Holly Springs Elementary area and assigning it to Holly Ridge Elementary. So we recognize, and we said this at the board table with our board members, this is a lot of individual movements in this one particular region. However, as staff, we feel confident that if we move forward with these recommendations, we can kind of walk away from this area for a very significant period of time, like at least until 2032, 33 time period. This really would account for and allow for all the growth that's projected in the region to be able to be absorbed by these schools over time. So that's why we also wanted to recommend those really generous stability rules so families could slowly shift to the new assignment patterns as they saw that it worked best for their families, or as new residents moved into the area, they of course would be assigned to the schools for their attendance area. So just a quick reminder, these 3 sections are the areas that are being protected to be impacted. Anything in these 3 circles would be eligible for those really generous stability rules. The one that we showed earlier for Rex Road, those would be the 4th and 5th grade version. What you see here with this orange label at the top of the table lets you know that this is if we were to move forward with all those recommendations we just reviewed, the opening of Rex Road Elementary, as well as all of those cascading or domino type assignment changes in the Holly Springs area, would result in this type of crowding if every single student that was projected to be impacted takes the new assignment. So we do realize that with stability rules, some of these numbers will be a little bit more fluid because some families will opt to stay at their current school and provide their own transportation. However, we feel that this is a much better balance of enrollment across all these schools over time. You can also see the projected change going into the 26-27 school year, which again takes into account continuing to roll forward, as well as the continued growth in this region. If you'll recall from one of those earlier slides, this portion of the county is one of our higher growth rate areas. So we are going to continuously see new students moving into this region over time. And just as one more time as a reminder, this 896 capacity that's displayed for Holly Springs Elementary School does reflect a significant number of trailer units providing capacity for the school. So if we can get them a little bit more normalized to their core building facility or their core structure, then this 78% won't be so low. It'll actually start to normalize and be more of a 95 to 100% over time. Bowling Road then is kind of moving down in the district. It's in that Fuquay-Varina area on the southern edge of our county line. This is another school in the area that's going to impact this region. And so we want to talk through the recommendations for this school as well. Similar to Rex Road, the current recommendation is for Bowling Road to open as a multi-track year-round elementary school with a capacity of 924. If you'll recall, that capital improvement plan slide that I shared with you earlier showed that we don't really have any more elementary schools opening in this area with the exception of Hilltop Needmore, which is a little bit more north and not in this, the core southern part of the Fuquay-Varina and Holly Springs areas. So recognizing that we don't have a significant number of new elementary schools in the plan coming to this area, we really felt like as staff, being good stewards of taxpayer resources, that we really needed to recommend multi-track for all of these elementary schools to give us the most capacity possible on day one. We do recognize, however, that this particular school is located on the same campus as the newly constructed Fuquay-Varina Middle, and that school is operating on a traditional calendar and is projected to continue to operate on a traditional calendar. So we do recognize this creates a new situation for our district to consider. Is it okay to have a multi-track elementary school on the same campus as a traditional middle school? This would be a new sort of space for us as a district. However, from a capacity standpoint, we just don't see the need to have Fuquay-Varina Middle operate on a multi-track year-round calendar. And so to provide stability for those families, we're trying not to make too many changes on both sides of that. However, we have seen some feedback in the thought exchange that indicates there'd be a strong preference for having Bowling Road be traditional. So we are reviewing that and evaluating that, and we'll be taking any adjustments to the board on October 15th. I can't promise that we'll make recommended adjustments, but we are continuing to review that feedback to see if that's feasible. In this area, you'll notice that the list of impacted schools is significantly longer. There are 5 different elementary schools projected to be impacted by the opening of Bowling Road Elementary. Because of the rapid rate of growth in this portion of the county, we've kind of had to create a little bit of a patchwork quilt to make things work with the school facilities that we had at the time. If we do nothing and make no changes to any of these schools, you'll see that, get my cursor in the right place, you'll see this level of projected crowding at all of the schools, most at or above 100% crowding. So if we make no changes, that'll continue to be a challenge. You'll notice that Lincoln Heights Magnet Elementary School, the magnet school in this area, is significantly overcrowded, which really makes it difficult for magnet application students to get into the school. So lots of those types of factors are being considered here. So for this map, what you're seeing again on the left is the existing base attendance areas for all the schools that are projected to be impacted. And on the right, you're seeing the resulting projected base attendance area for Bowling Road. So this sort of bright yellow color at this time would be the projected base attendance area for Bowling Road Elementary based on the fact that it's currently proposed to be multi-track year-round and have that capacity of 924. Because of the growth in this area, as I mentioned earlier, we have quite a few schools being impacted. So this is the impact area that we're looking at. The area that this arrow is pointing to represents the portion of South Lakes Elementary that's being proposed to become part of Bowling Road's base attendance area. The darker green area represented by this arrow represents the current portion of Buckhorn Creek Elementary that is proposed to be impacted or become part of Bowling Road Elementary's base attendance area. These 2 pink or dark magenta type color areas are portions of the Fuquay-Varina Elementary base attendance area that are proposed to become part of Bowling Road. This yellow area is a southern portion of the existing Lincoln Heights base attendance area proposed to become part of Bowling Road. And right here in the middle is a portion of Herbert Akins Road Elementary's base attendance area that is being recommended to become part of Bowling Road. So again, this is the general impact area. The bright yellow that you see to the right would be the proposed final assignment area for this school. We do recognize that the majority of students being proposed to come into Bowling Road are currently attending schools that are on a traditional calendar, and it's proposed to open as multi-track year-round, with the exception of the Herbert Akins Road Elementary students. And again, I'll say it just to be perfectly plain and honest, we do recognize that it is located on the same campus as a traditional middle school. And so that is creating a different paradigm, a different set of ideas for us as a district. Are we focusing on, the capacity needs of the district and perhaps a 6-12 calendar alignment, which will be a little bit more common throughout the district? Because we still are going to need those multi-track year-round elementary schools over time. I didn't speak to it much during the planning process, but there is a reminder that there's a kindergarten, first, second, and third grade class size legislation that impacts our ability to fill our elementary schools. That is different from all the other grades in the district. But I'm sure some of you will have questions about that, and so we'll talk more about that later. Here then you see the resulting projected impact on all of the schools. So if we were to move forward with these recommendations and all of the students accepted their new assignments and nobody did a stability transfer, then this would be our projected crowding going into 25-26. You'll notice that a couple of the schools have an asterisk beside their percentage number, and that's because you probably will recognize you've seen them on multiple slides. So they're being impacted by multiple assignment changes throughout today's presentation. And so this number just reflects the sum total of all those impacts. And we're almost done. So the last set of base assignment recommendations we want to talk about, and then we really want to get to your questions, is related to the new Fuquay-Varina Middle School. Again, it's not a new school. It's just at a new location, beautifully constructed facility. I'm sure the students are extremely excited to be in the new building. It is currently operating on a traditional calendar. We are making no recommended changes to that calendar. Its original capacity at its original location was 936. With all of the flex space that's been built into the newly designed structure, its current capacity at maximum level would be 1,404. We're not shooting for that. We're going more for like a 1,248, but we've essentially built in some flexible capacity to the design of the building so that before we would have to reassign students or cap students, we could fill the school all the way up to 1,404 before having to make any specific changes. But we're going to target more of a 1,248. And of course, as I've mentioned multiple times, Bowling Road is located on the same campus as this new structure. So you'll notice that part of what we did for Bowling Road was to bring in a portion of the Buckhorn Creek base attendance area. And so the recommendation here is that this portion of the base attendance area for Bowling Road be aligned to Fuquay-Varina Middle. If you're going to be assigned to Bowling Road Elementary, we think it makes sense that you would continue on and go to Fuquay-Varina Middle School, since the two schools are located on the same campus. And so that's the only reason for this recommendation, is to provide that sort of cohort continuity for students to be able to attend school on that same campus for grades K through 8. We do recognize that this is a Holly Grove year-round to a Fuquay traditional, and I do want to be perfectly plain. Holly Grove Middle School doesn't need the relief. This is not addressing any kind of overcrowding concerns. This really is specifically being made for families so that those students can have that cohort continuity going from Bowling Road Elementary onto Fuquay-Varina Middle. And so you can see the projected impact on the schools here. So as I mentioned, Holly Grove does not need relief. It is not currently overcrowded. We do have plans to continue to use that capacity over time as Holly Springs in general continues to grow. But for right now, again, this recommendation is specifically being made for that cohort continuity piece. All right, the last thing I want to talk through, and I'll do these very briefly, is that because of some of the base assignment changes, some of the current calendar application schools that you might see when you type in your address and our address lookup just don't make sense anymore. And while I wish it were a technical correction that we as staff could just handle, because it's a change and a choice that's displayed for your address, we do need to bring it to the board, and we just want to bring it to you. So the way to read these charts is that the area on the left with the blue sort of highlighted tables is because your school, we'll use this first one right here, Buckhorn, because Buckhorn Creek Elementary is the current base for your address with choices of Valentine multi-track year-round and Herbert Akins multi-track year-round. And this portion of Buckhorn Creek space is being projected to go to Bowling Road multi-track year-round elementary school. It'll no longer need a multi-track year-round calendar application choice. So we would simply say, we'll drop that because you don't need it anymore. Your school's operating on a multi-track year-round calendar. So the blue kind of represents today, 24-25, and the orange represents what we're thinking it would look like for 25-26. And so that's kind of how you read the chart all the way down. I've highlighted for green for you the the specific recommendations for this area. Again, this is posted to our website. You probably want to spend a little bit of time looking at this. I would highly encourage you to simply use the address lookup tool, but this is the way we present it so we can show them in summary to the board. Another example of a change that you can see here at the bottom is less about taking away a choice, but just reducing it. So currently this area has 2 traditional calendar options. That means 3 buses going into one neighborhood for just roughly base type schools. So we just want to reduce that to a single choice so that we can improve transportation efficiency for families. I will say, because these are technically assignment changes, your student may see an assignment change if you're currently attending one of those calendar application schools. You would be eligible under those super generous transportation stability rules as long as it's from an existing school to an existing school. If the students are being proposed to go to, say, Bowling Road or Rex Road, those would be those more restrictive 4th and 5th grade type stability rules. More elementary school changes based on all those same rules. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. You're certainly welcome to look at these online. And then one final set in your area for South Lakes students impacted by the opening of Bowling Road. At the middle school level, again, similarly, because there's a middle school recommendation for a portion of Holly Grove to go to Fuquay-Varina Middle, well, they won't need a traditional calendar option anymore, and so we would simply remove that. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are 2 schools that are going to change their operating calendar from multi-track to traditional. As a result, they can't serve as a multi-track year-round application school anymore, and they no longer need a traditional calendar application school. And so that's what you're seeing here on this slide. Okay, we're almost at questions. So timeline and next steps. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure we briefly review where we are in the process. So right now we're in the middle of our information sessions. We also have a public open house that's coming up, and I'll share some information about that in a moment. The next thing that we're going to do with the board is come see them on October 15th. And what we'll do during that session is provide an update on all the feedback we've been receiving. And if there are any adjustments that we feel like we need to make based on the feedback that we're receiving from families, we'll present those during that work session as well. At that time, we'll do one more round of public engagement for families just to make sure they fully understand the recommendations and can get any of those last minute questions about stability or what have you addressed. And then the board themselves will hold their own public hearing on November 12th. This is that official formal session where you sign up to speak and you can talk to the board directly if you have materials you want to share with them, all those kinds of things. So that's scheduled for November 12th. This is an update from our presentation. So those of you that were able to watch the work session, these are some new dates. That's why I've highlighted them in this sort of pinkish red color. And originally we were hoping to bring the final draft to the board on November 12th, but with this public hearing date being on the 12th, that would not be reasonable. So we're going to bring the final draft to the board for review and approval on November 26th, which means it'll probably be that first week of December before we can communicate specific information about how to apply for your stability transfers. I have mentioned that we have an open house coming up. Here's where we are with our public engagement. You're our second session. We had one earlier this week. We still have 2 more to come. If there's anyone you know that you think would benefit from attending a live session, especially when we get to the Q&A portion, please encourage them to come to the September 19th session, because that is going to serve as a review for some of our movements in the Raleigh area, but also a general overview where it's kind of a catch-all. So anybody can ask any questions about any region in that session. And then of course, we're going to have our live in-person open house that's going to be hosted by Herbert Akins Road Middle School on September 24th. It'll be a floating open house. This is not that public hearing that we're talking about. This really is an opportunity to talk with our staff from academics, before and after school care, transportation, athletics, translation services, special education services, safety and security, facilities and design. We're going to bring everybody with us to this session so that any questions that are going to help you better understand how your student's going to transition to the new school or a different school, they'll be there. We'll have some area superintendents that can talk about the hiring process for principals and teachers, because I know that's a prominent question for some of our families. We have some teacher shortages. How are we going to fill new schools? Very legitimate question. So we've pulled all those people together to be able to be available for you for that session. Again, this is not the public hearing. This is just that opportunity for information gathering for you and your family. All the information's on our website. You've seen it a million times. And now I think I'm ready to hand things back over to our host, Corrali, while I take a couple sips of water, and we will start diving into all of your questions.
All right, we have plenty of questions. So we're going to start with some stability questions, Susan. First one, my oldest kid is in traditional calendar school. Is my younger one eligible for stability transfer as the new school is year round?
Ooh, okay. So we need to talk about the difference between a stability transfer and a general transfer or a regular official transfer request transfer. Stability transfers are based on stability rules for a specific enrollment plan. So if your student's being assigned to Bowling Road and they're rising into fourth or fifth grade and you're eligible for stability, that's a stability transfer. And you'd be able to put in that request and ask to stay at your current school. If you're looking for calendar alignment and you're not automatically eligible for a stability transfer, you would then want to participate in one of our other application processes, like the magnet application process or the general transfer process. Those processes would be open to anybody, regardless of what's happening to you from an assignment standpoint. So you would still have both of those available to you. When we get to the general transfer period, it's roughly March. I'm going to probably get it wrong, but it's like March 4th to the 14th or 5th to the 15th, something like that. You can check our website for those dates. That process is when you can say, hey, I've got a K-8 calendar misalignment. I'd like for my kids to be on the same calendar. I could provide transportation to this school, or maybe this school's listed as one of my options that comes with transportation. You know, put all those details in there and our staff will review that. And we review those on a case by case basis so that we can really look at your individual hardships. So just real quick, short summary, stability transfers are specifically because you've been assigned to a different school and you're eligible to stay at your current school. It's a very specific list. You'll get very specific instructions. Other types of transfers, you're still absolutely welcome to put in those requests, and those will happen during March.
If my child was assigned to Rex Road Elementary, does he have to move? He's in second grade and has no older siblings.
Yeah, with that particular example, that student would not be eligible for a stability transfer, so they would be assigned to the new school. Again, you could still participate in magnet application or hardship transfer processes, but the reality is we need students to attend those new schools to make sure we have sufficient number of teachers and we can offer the right types of academic programming. So most likely we wouldn't be able to provide any kind of a stability transfer with the current rules, but you certainly could put in requests for other things if there's specific and unique things that are factoring into your family situation that are creating hardships. And we'll evaluate those one by one.
We have two similar questions, so I'm going to combine them.
Okay.
Are third, fourth, and fifth graders eligible for an approval for the stability transfer?
Okay. So the current rules say that if you're going to be starting fourth or fifth grade for 25-26, which would mean this year you're a third or fourth grader, those are the students that have that automatic eligibility and would get the notifications and kind of walk through the process to be able to put in a stability transfer. If you're a current second grader rising into third grade, those are not automatically guaranteed under the current proposals. And I'll be candid, I don't think staff would feel comfortable adding them only because we need those K1, 2, 3 kiddos to really get the school going and get it started. However, if that rising third grader had an older sibling that was able to stay, then absolutely, yes, they could stay. But as a standalone student who doesn't have an older elementary student that qualifies, a rising third grader or current second grader would not be eligible under the current rules.
This is about student stability transfer and having a younger sibling who's still not in school.
Okay.
Is there an ability to apply for a future younger sibling to stay at the same school who is in preschool next year when the initial stability transfer offer is given? Or will they be required to enroll at the new school with no transfer option, and will the students attend different schools?
Cool. You actually get to choose. So if I have a student who won't quite be ready for kindergarten in 25-26, but might be coming at a later date, then they won't be in that group for stability transfers because they're not ready to start school yet. Our regular transfer policy for those transfers that you put in March says if you're putting in a request to join an older sibling, regardless of the reason, we're going to work to approve those for you. So you would have the choice to just put in a regular transfer in March of the year that your kindergartner is getting ready to start, and we would be able to approve that one. Or if at that point in time as a family you're like, hey, they've made best friends with so-and-so who lives down the street and they're going to the new school, and since our older one's going into the fifth grade and it's only going to be for 1 year, you would have the choice to decide what you'd like to do there. So the short answer is yes, you would have an option to do it. It just wouldn't be called a stability transfer. It would be the normal policy transfers for kindergarten students joining older siblings.
When will be notified when the stability transfer is opened?
Great question. I'm going to backtrack a little bit on that kindergarten question too. One thing we haven't talked about is our pre-registration period or pre-enrollment period opens in mid-October each year. So those of you that do have current preschool students that will be ready for kindergarten in 25-26 that have older siblings, you're welcome to go ahead and get them pre-registered in mid-October so that you'll have an ID number for them and they'll be ready for those stability transfers when the window opens. Right now, we're still working with our technical advisors because I literally found out about 4 days ago what the shift in the schedule was going to be. So we're working with our technical team to determine how quickly we can get the information that is approved on the 26th completely uploaded into all of our systems so that we can properly, accurately identify our students who are eligible for stability. So I'm going to generically say it'll probably be the first week of December. I can't give you a hard date until closer, maybe October 15th when we work with the board. We'll give that information then. But it'll probably be that first week in December. You'll get notifications from our office. We're also going to share information with your current principals so that they can we can do a two-pronged approach, make sure that we're both reminding you that you can put in your stability transfer. And then we will message you. It'll be annoying and I apologize ahead of time. We will message you multiple times saying, did you forget? Hey, it's getting ready to close. Are you sure? We noticed you haven't put in your stability transfer. So we're going to try to really over communicate that process for you just to make sure in the busyness of December that the email doesn't go unnoticed and that you don't miss that opportunity. I will pause because I'm not sure if this question is going to come up or not, Corrali, but one thing we do want to say about the stability transfers, particularly if you're trying to go back to one of our capped or crowded schools, you got to do it in December to get the guaranteed yes. If you miss that window and you wait till the regular transfer period in March, it's really going to be contingent on whether or not there's still seats in the school. So what I'd really encourage you is if you're not quite sure, do the stability transfer in December, get that seat locked in, make sure you have it. Because come March, if you're like, oh, we just figured out that your best friend's going to the other school, or we're not going to be able to make this transportation work, or I've heard more about this calendar and I think I'm kind of excited about it. Whatever it is that helps you to make that different decision. If you put that request in that March period, asking to go back to base or to the new school, we can approve it with no questions asked. But I can't always do a late stability because sometimes the school got filled up with all those original transfers and that might not be room left. Taking a little license on this, sorry.
Now some planning and process /
Sure.
assignment questions. We combined these two because they were very similar. How do we propose changes so that we can see differences in this assignment plan? For example, Stonemont neighborhood, we want Stonemont neighborhood to be assigned to Holly Grove instead of Rex Road. Is this the final proposal or a draft?
Great question. This is, to be clear, an initial draft. So the way you do that is through the thought exchange. I've already seen that request multiple times in the thought. I know it hasn't closed, but I'm going in there and we're looking, even though we can't summarize all the results yet. So we have seen this very specific example and several others like it. Hey, is there any way that our neighborhood or our area could remain assigned to our current school? We evaluate each one of those individually. We assess the impact. And when we come to the meeting in October, if there's any adjustments that we can make in response to those feedbacks, we'll present those in October. If staff feels like it's just logistically not possible, we'll at least have a really solid explanation as to what we explored and maybe why we couldn't consider it. So no, this is not the final draft. This is the initial draft. It's really not a final draft until we get to November 26th, because when the board has their public hearing on the 12th, if they direct staff to do some additional things, they can do that as well. So there's multiple opportunities to continue to provide feedback to determine if any adjustments can be made.
How do we know if our children will be reassigned?
So the final decision will be November 26th. So if you're not sure and you haven't had a chance to look, go to our website. Let me see if I can go back to that link real quick. If you go to the enrollment proposal website, the one that's listed at the top, on the right-hand side, correct, Corrali, there's a address lookup tool. Unless you're on your phone. I'm not sure where it would be on your phone.
Yes, on the right-hand side, if you're on a computer, sorry, I needed to figure out which one was my right and my left. If you're on mobile, the button will be at the bottom of the page. But that main page and 2025 enrollment proposal.
And so what you're looking for there is that little button that says type in your address. So you can literally type in your address and it'll show you a before and after list. If the before and the after are the same, then you're not part of the current recommendations. In addition, there's a little toggle feature where you can look at a before and after map where it's just an individual map for your school versus all those maps kind of merged together that I have to do for my presentations. So if you're not quite sure if your address is impacted and you haven't had a chance to do that, please use that tool. And then if there are any adjustments made at the October work session, a revised version of that tool will be posted to the website as well. So you can check again October 15th, 16th.
Will kids who live in the Honeycutt subdivision that are already walking to school be reassigned?
Honeycutt, I hadn't heard that one before. So I can't say, but I will add that to the FAQs.
Yes, and you can type in your address in the address lookup and it'll tell you.
Yes. But if you're asking whether or not the Honeycutt subdivision could remain assigned to their current school and they're impacted, that as a new one I have not seen yet. So I will assess that one and we'll have response to that either on the FAQ or at the October 15th work session.
How can we see the exact data with the 4 pillars for every single neighborhood?
Exact data for the 4 pillars. Okay, so on our website, there's several different places where information is stored. Information that's specific to planning is on that assignment planning site. So we cross-link to all those other agencies. So we cross-link to the enrollment forecast so you can see where that forecast data came from and you can read the full report, all the data charts, tables, all that kind of stuff that's put together by the demographers. The capital improvement plan is linked there so you can see whatever information is available from our facilities team on schedules for construction and site selection and all of that. As far as individual student information, a lot of that is protected because of FERPA or the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. So certain types of information that I have available to me for review and assessment, I can't necessarily share with the public because it would betray the confidence of your students' data. But the summarized version of it is on our main website under district facts. And so we might want to do a cross link to that, Corrali, on our website in the future so that people can see where that main district information is posted about enrollment trends, different types of scores on tests and different types of background information, cultural, demographic information for schools. All of that's posted on the district facts page. So that's the information we are allowed to share because it's not individually identifiable by a student.
I think you already went over this, but will there be any new high schools in the district?
So the only new high school that we're projected to open is Felton Grove High School. The next new high school on the horizon is Morrisville High School. After that, we don't have any new high schools in the capital improvement plan through 2030, 31. So it would have to be beyond those years for any new high schools to be coming. So with Fuquay Arena being reconstructed, with Willow Spring being brand new, well, not brand new anymore, but new, and then Felton Grove coming online, that'll be the last high school in this region for the foreseeable future.
Avocet neighborhood does not have a traditional calendar option for elementary school. When will this be updated?
I'm glad that question came up. Over the last several years, largely due to our transportation concerns, our bus driver shortage, we've been asked as a student assignment office to partner with the transportation department to determine where we could reduce transportation needs as a district. And in one of those areas has been the calendar application options. So as new schools open, we're no longer identifying an alternate calendar application option that comes with transportation. So you may not see a specific school listed that has transportation available. So then we pause and say that doesn't mean you don't have choices. You certainly can use the magnet application process or the regular transfer process to ask for a school with a different calendar based on your family's needs. And we will evaluate those one by one, as I mentioned earlier, and you still have access to be able to ask for those choices. We just can't provide district transportation to them at this time. So instead of seeing it listed as a marked choice, you now have the freedom to kind of say, well, which traditional calendar school would actually work best for my family? Before and after school care, carpool, whatever it is, and you can list up to 3 choices during the transfer process to let us know how, if it's the only one that will work, you just list the one. If there's 2 or 3 that might solve your family's needs, you can list up to 3.
When will the existing schools know how many students are staying? Sorry,
Yep, I think I get that one.
Down. As I'm sure it will impact how many classes we will have on each track.
So I've been talking with the principals that are impacted and their area superintendents to give them this basic timeline, which is once the board makes a final decision in November and approves the plan, and we know for sure which actual students are directly impacted by the assignment changes, and we get that information out to our families so they can do their stability transfers, we will give our principals those updated numbers in late December, early January, so that they can know exactly how many students elected to stay through stability transfer versus how many went ahead and went with the new assignment. We'll do another update with them in January after magnet application period. We do another update with them in March after the regular transfer period, just in case someone decides they want to come back to base, or maybe we missed a kindergartner and we got to get a late stability in there. So we will do regular updates with the principals so that they have as much information as possible as they're planning for the next school year. But December, once the stability transfer window closes, is kind of the meat and potatoes date. That's the date where they really are going to know I have a really good idea of how many students are going to be serving.
Are there any renderings or plans of the interior of Rex Road Elementary?
Yes. I would encourage you to come to our session on September 24th, because our facilities design and construction team is going to come with a lot of those. What we're allowed to share, for safety reasons, there are certain parts of our plans we don't share super publicly because we don't want just any old person to know how to navigate around a school. But yes, those renderings are available and will be available for view on September 24th. I will talk with them and see if any of them can also be posted to the website. And if so, we'll add a few more to our sites so that you can see those. But yes, there are some renderings available.
These are a ton of changes for one geographic area, but all of these changes would hopefully mean no further changes in this area until 2032 or 33. Was that comment specific to elementary schools or all schools in this area?
Based on the current capital improvement plan, Hilltop Needmore Elementary is the only elementary school left in this region. And so please don't get, you're going to get dizzy if I scroll back all these slides. So let me go this way. This here. As you can see on this slide, Hilltop Needmore is in this general area. It's more of a Fuquay kind of Garner going in that sort of general direction area school. That's the last new school in this region. So that portion, not the Holly Springs area, not really the lower Fuquay area, but that portion that's maybe Banks, Ballantyne, Westlake, that kind of area, they're going to have one more impact next year when Hilltop Needmore opens. And then after that, we're good to go for a very, very long time.
Will there be changes to the proposed maps for the new elementary schools? Opportunities where lines may be adjusted?
Yeah, so I think that's similar to one of the other questions that we talked about. Based on the feedback that we're receiving in sessions like this and through the thought exchange, we are evaluating where adjustments might be appropriate or recommended. And so I would say tune in October 15th or check our website, maybe the 16th, to see whether or not any of those adjustments have been recommended. I'm not going to give you false hope that we're going to do massive sweeping changes, because that would be very unfair to families who weren't even sort of, cued in, but maybe reducing the size of a base attendance area, that would be more likely to happen than massive shifts and changes, because certainly we don't want to do that to families. We don't want to create massive changes after the initial draft has been released.
With the predicted utilization of Rex Elementary for the next 2 years at only about 50%, would the initial staffing goal of the first couple of years only be around 50% as well? Or does Rex intend to try to get 100% of staff in place during the first year?
Yeah. Excellent question of how we load our schools. And I would also encourage those types of questions to come with you to that session, because we're going to have area superintendents who can really talk to you about how we staff the schools. We did this with Woods Creek this year. What we've tried to do differently over the last 2 years is learn from previous experience. So for those of you that are in the South Lakes area, you might recognize that South Lakes has really only been open for about 4 or 5 years, and this is its second reduction in its assignment area. Because in its first year of opening, we really tried to give it a lot of students so that it could be relatively full, and then it got too full too fast, and we had to start, quickly adapting and adjusting. So rather than try to have 100% staffing on year one, we've gone for a more gradual increase approach. So let's be comfortable with an elementary school operating with about 50% of its full complement of staff, and slowly year over year add on. That does not mean that they won't have 100% of services, But if I don't need 4 fourth grade teachers this year, I only need 1 or 2, then let's only hire 1 or 2. And then next year, as the class gets a little bit bigger, I can add in another fourth grade teacher, sort of thing. You're still going to have music, you're going to have art, you're going to have media, you're going to have PE, you're going to have all of those standard courses, and you're going to have full service for your students in those courses and those electives and specials. But we might just not necessarily hire all of the 4th and 5th grade teachers or all of the 3rd grade teachers. We'll hire just enough teachers to serve the students that we have, and then slowly, gradually add those extra teachers. But you'll have those support services will be 100% provided for your students in terms of being available for all the students that need them, special education services, counseling, all of those types of roles. Those will be filled. The only thing is just classroom teachers. We'll make sure we adjust those according to the number of students being served and then gradually increase. If you want to take a look, Woods Creek is kind of doing that right now.
How and where do we propose that our neighborhood not be included in the move?
Similar to some of the questions we've had before, just continue to post information in the thought exchange. Really put the name of your subdivision. Please do not put personally identifiable information like your actual street address or your child's name. Our AI thankfully moderates that and pulls that out so other people won't see your information. But if you can use the actual name of your subdivision, or if you don't have a proper subdivision, but you've got cross streets, you can put in those cross streets, anything that helps us to quickly identify where you are. We will assess, we will evaluate. I do not want to overpromise. I can't promise that we'll be able to make lots of adjustments because we still do need to have students attending our new schools, but we certainly will investigate and evaluate every single one of those to determine what may or may not be possible as an adjustment for the review in October.
Stability transfer without transportation is very difficult for parents. Is there a chance that students will be eligible to receive transportation?
I wish I could say maybe. Right now, just with the level of service that we have, I think for the first time in a couple of years, we actually have the right, Corrali, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we actually have enough bus drivers for the routes that we have.
Yes.
Yet we have probably 300 less routes than we had, pre-COVID. So our service level has been severely hampered by that inability to just get all that talent in place. So unless we get to a point where we have more drivers available, it's going to be really hard for us to say we can guarantee transportation for something like a stability transfer or a transfer of any kind. That being said, there's always a possibility, because if you're in an area that's, on an edge and there's a route for a bus that's picking up kids on the other side and they're going, and you might be able to use the ineligible transportation request process to ask for that type of transportation, but I cannot guarantee or promise that.
If my children currently walk to school, can I make a request that they are not reassigned to another school further away from home?
Sure. And so I think that would be similar to some of the questions we had earlier. Put the name of your neighborhood in the thought exchange and say, hey, this neighborhood or this street, don't put your address, but put something that's identifiable, can walk to this school. Please don't change the assignment. If it's an existing school to an existing school, all students are automatically eligible for stability transfer under the current rules. And I don't predict that the board would walk away from that. I think they're very pleased with those recommendations and would be happy to support those. So if you're going from Holly Springs to Holly Ridge and you'd like to stay at Holly Springs, you'd be eligible to do that anyway with the current state of the stability transfers. It's just the new schools that have those slightly more restrictive rules, just because we need new students to go to the new school. And we need to relieve those crowded schools that we're reducing the enrollment for.
We're getting close to time, but we have more questions. Just a follow-up to our 100% staffing at Rex Road. Would AIG be 100% supported at Rex initially? Not sure if that's considered special services.
Gotcha. I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure how the allotments work for that. I know that any service that students need, they will be provided. But in terms of percent ratio, I don't know that they'd warrant a full-time teacher. Maybe they'd split time with another school, because that happens today, even in a fully staffed school. So that might be a good question to bring with you to our information session in September if you can physically attend. Worst case, we'll start researching it anyway, because we're using all these questions to help us build out our frequently asked questions section of our website. So either way, we're going to get you that answer. But if you want to hear it in person, you could come September 24th, or if you want to just keep checking the website and the FAQ section, we'll get you an answer to that question.
I'm combining a few because there's a lot of track questions.
Oh, okay.
How will tracks be assigned for the new school? Will we be able to request that we be on the same track? Can we make a request to which track our child will be on, and when will we find out what track will be on?
Got it, I think. So I'm going to use the experience that we had in opening Woods Creek this year. What happened was we tried to get the principal hired a little bit early. The principal was named, I want to say, as early as December, gets the information to that principal so that they can see which students are already on a particular track and start thinking about building tracks. So I know there's a very concerted effort that if you're already at a year-round school and you already have a particular track, to try to keep you on the track you're already on, unless you specifically request a track change. So that would be step one, would be to try to honor those tracks. For students that are coming, let's say, from a traditional school or a rising kindergartners that have never been assigned to a track, then the normal process would go through. You contact the school, they ask you your track preferences, they work their hardest to balance their tracks, but also honor your tracks. As far as which tracks will be offered, a lot of that's going to be dependent on the total number of students that don't take stability transfers, and come to the school. What we did at Woods Creek, and I hate to keep using it as an example, but it just opened this year, so it's a perfect example of this type of situation because they had the same stability rules that this group is going to have. We were able to offer every single track in kindergarten, first, second, and third, a class on each track. And then that way there was already one track established and we could start building. And for those of you that know the language, double tracking, when time was appropriate. But for fourth and fifth, they focused just on tracks 1 and 4. And then they'll start adding in those other tracks as those third graders age forward. But that was because of the nature of how students were coming to them with track assignments. So 2 and 4 makes more sense, or 1 and 3 makes more sense. They'll be a little bit flexible with fourth grade based on how the students are coming to them. And as far as track assignment requests and track change requests, those are going to follow the normal process that you would at your current school. The principal will send out a notification, hey, it's time, let me know what your track preferences are, and then here's your track assignment. If you'd like to request a change, please let me know. So all of those normal steps and processes will be followed for the school.
I think we can squeeze in a few more.
Okay.
I have a first and third grader slated for Bowling Road. They are enrolled in a traditional school now, and bowling is year-round. Is there a possibility of changing it to traditional? If not, will both kids be on the same track? I think you just mentioned.
Yeah, so we didn't really address families. Regardless of what happens, schools will work to keep all your students on the same track, unless you ask for something different. And believe it or not, I've heard cases where, like identical twins, the family might be like, let's get them on different tracks. They need a little time apart. I have identical twins, and to me, I know my life schedule would not go for that. But for some families, that works, right? Or, hey, they just have different needs, and it'd be nice for them to be on different tracks. So unless you as a family request that your children be on different tracks, the school will work to keep your siblings all on the same track, because we understand that that's family continuity. As far as the traditional calendar, I've heard a lot in the thought exchange, a lot of families asking for bowling to be traditional. I've heard people asking for Pleasant Plains to be traditional. So we are assessing all of those requests. We'll have a report out to the board for that. So October 15th, I think we'll probably have a good idea as to whether or not staff can make a recommended calendar change, or if board's going to direct us to make a calendar change for any of those. So I think that'll be a good time to check that. But you said you have a current first and third, so that would mean technically you're eligible for stability transfer, because that third grader will be going into fourth and that first grader can join in. So you might have some options depending on your ability to provide transportation.
Okay. Maybe our last one, HGGS. So Holly Grove Elementary has a similar capacity as Rex. Holly Grove has approximately 2 classes for each grade/track. Is that what is expected for Rex Road? If so, what is the timeline? Is that the expectation for the initial couple of years?
Sure. So when we're opening a new elementary school, I'm not sure if you heard my response to an earlier question. We've shifted our focus to not starting with a school that's really full and then having to reassign kids out 3 or 4 years down the road. Instead, we're going to start with the school that's about half full and let it gradually fill as the developments in the area, because we had a lot of families asking us to move new subdivisions or move subdivisions that haven't finished construction yet. So when we balance that with some existing populations, we get a school that's roughly half full for the first year or so. So yes, over time, Rex would be expected to be a full multi-track year-round school with a capacity of 924, double tracking probably across all 4 tracks when all is said and done, particularly in grades K through 3, because those class sizes are so much smaller. But year 1, it's probably going to be single tracks. year two, we might be doubling on one of the tracks. It'll just, we'll let the movement of the students into the building dictate how quickly it develops up to a full double track.
Okay. Everything else, like Susan said, we will update our website with all of these questions, and we will update our frequently asked questions, and you can check that regularly. I will also post a recording of this session tomorrow on our website. Thank you all for joining. Your input and feedback is vital to the refinement of the enrollment plan. Remember, we will present a summary of the feedback received and any recommended adjustments to the proposal to the board on October 15th, with a final vote expected on November 26th. The thought exchange, again, will remain open through September 29th. We encourage you to participate and post your comments, rate, and explore the exchange. Again, thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for hosting for us, Corelli. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you found the session informative and helpful. Good night.